Welcome back to the Living in Tulsa podcast. I am so excited for you guys to talk to our guest today, Monroe Nichols. He is a mayoral candidate for the City of Tulsa, and we are going to learn a lot about you today.
You know what? I'm excited about it.
Good.
Very excited. Happy to be here. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. And when we're happy to be here, we are in the church studio.
Yeah.
And you made a very good comment that I had never heard. What did you call that?
I said it's rare air being here.
We are in rare air,
That's right.
and that's amazing.
That's right.
For those of you who don't know, this is an iconic recording studio. There's been Elton John and I think Willie Nelson and Stevie Wonder.
Yeah, I mean, all the people who, from a point in time that you wanted to hear, have been through here, and they've sat right over there. And that's the coolest thing in the world, I think.
Yeah, played music. So, we're somewhere that's amazing.
Can
and it feels
you
great.
play an instrument?
I cannot. Can you play an instrument?
No. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe I get in here, I get to feel the spirit of everybody else, and all of a sudden I'm like, you never know.
Yeah? You're not going to bang out some chopsticks?
I played the bass drum when I was in middle school.
Middle school? Okay.
Some nobody knew about me.
Yeah. So you probably could. Kathy over here can play chopsticks.
There we go. Well, I mean, we could put something together. we got to start. We're not starting with nothing right now.
Yeah, but we better not do that to the studio.
Probably
not. We can't do that.
We disgrace the great names that we've talked about if you put me over or something.
We would. Okay, so let's talk about you.
Yeah.
And let's talk about a little bit about, your journey to where you're at now.
Yeah.
So how did Tulsa come on your radar?
It was actually came to college to go to TU.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was younger, I grew up in Central Texas, actually. And, not something you talk a lot about when you're running for office in Oklahoma, but grew up in Central Texas. And, my grandfather was a pastor. One was a pastor, one was a plant worker. My mom was a probation officer growing up. My dad was a police officer. So kind of fun to grow up with pastors and police officers and probation officers, right? But the underlying thing there was it was like a family that kind of was dedicated to public service in one way or another. And in some ways, I kind of thought it was like what you did as a job when you grew up, because that's what my mom did, my dad did, my grandfather did, because he was also an Air Force veteran. And, when I was trying to make a decision about where to go to college, Tulsa popped up on the list. And I had a football coach who came to visit me in high school, and I was like, I had never been to Tulsa before. And so I did a little bit of research on Tulsa, and I learned things about Tulsa that a lot of Tulsans probably didn't know about Tulsa. It was just intriguing to me. And so was here, played football here, and then my first job out of college was in the mayor's office, actually.
Which mayor?
Is Kathy Taylor.
Kathy Taylor.
And got the bug to serve here at that time, and have done it ever since. I was chief of staff to the president of OU after that. I've worked at the Chamber of Commerce. I've served on the Tulsa Tech board. Founded an organization called Impact Tulsa. I'm the Tulsa guy, and I've represented Tulsa in the legislature over the last 8 years. And so, this is just this is my community. This is my town, and I love it.
Okay, there is so much to unpack there, and I love that. So let's start out with Impact Tulsa.
Yeah.
Because that came first.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Impact Tulsa, I co-founded Impact Tulsa right before I ran for office, so 2014. So it was after the city and after those other things, and I use that as context because Impact Tulsa was really looking back at the experience at the city working in juvenile justice, the experience at OU working on community health related issues, the experience at the Chamber and at Career Tech, really thinking about these workforce related issues. Impact Tulsa was like, how are we bringing all these sectors together to ensure that every kid has a high quality education in Tulsa? Because we understand it's not just the job of schools, right? And that was the inspiration for Impact Tulsa. They're still doing great work. I left the organization when I got elected in 2016, but they're doing phenomenal work right now. And it's all about how are we really thinking about real data and understanding what's impacting young people and their families, and what are we doing about it, right? Having the courage to act. And so I'm really proud of Impact Tulsa, what they're doing today. I'm really proud that's part of my history. And I'm excited, frankly, on the other side, hopefully, of this mayor's race to continue to leverage that organization, the partnerships within it, to really, unleash the sum of all of our contributions to make sure that every kid has an opportunity in this community.
Right. That's such an amazing Such an amazing priority, such an amazing mission. Now, is Impact Tulsa something that the average person can get involved in? Is it in a volunteer organization?
It's not necessarily a volunteer organization, but what I would say is, though, Impact Tulsa actually represents like a partnership of like the 14 school districts that are in Tulsa County, the business community, a lot of other volunteer organizations. And so if you were to reach out to them and say, hey, I care about any particular issue, particularly things facing young people and their families, they'll connect you with somewhere where you can get involved, or they'll say, hey, here is a way you can directly get involved, right? Like they do a great job of, everything from really engaged on the issue of mental health for middle schoolers. Right now, they've pulled the data that shows eviction rates for children and families that are kind of facing eviction, and we know who those folks are, and they're starting to intervene. So they could point you in the right direction of things to get involved in that are based on data. So if I'm going to spend my time doing this, it's going to make an impact on a young person's life. I think that's really the whole thing about it, right? Is that we are all finding ways in which we can contribute in a real way that's going to make a real difference, and it's a great organization to reach out to if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, that's amazing. It is a great organization. I know previously, being in education, I'm familiar with it, and I know it is. So that's exciting that you co-founded that.
Yeah.
So then moving on, so you ran for state office.
That's right.
So to talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I've been in the legislature for 8 years now. We're actually sitting in House District 72. So we're in my legislative district as we sit right here
that's awesome.
At the church studio.
Yeah.
And it's been really cool. I decided to run for the legislature in 2016 because at the time, my son Gavin was, I think, a third grader. He's at Elliott Elementary School. And this is the time when we were running out of money every year, and we weren't able to make the investments in education. We were having a lot of conversation about 4-day school weeks, and those things can be a killer for a community, right?
Yeah.
And so I was really concerned about our ability at the state to make investments in my kid's future and the futures of kids, like him. And so there was a level of frustration, and some of that frustration was with who represented me at the time. And it actually wasn't partisan. It was somebody who was of my own political party. So it had nothing to do with Democrat versus Republican. It was about, are we going to get something done or not? And after the Impact Tulsa experience and everything else, I knew how critical it was to send people to the Capitol at the time who had some idea of the things that we needed to do and be willing to do it. And we were able to. Took a teacher walkout and some of those things, but we were able to raise revenue for the first time in the state in like 30 years and start to make those investments. And so, I ran largely as a parent who was frustrated and knew we had to do better. And fortunately, we got a long way to go as a state.
Yeah.
But we have made some progress. I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah. That's so interesting. That you started as a parent. So you really had no desire for public office, but it just led there?
I did because I didn't really want to do it at that time necessarily, right? It wasn't a great time. There was somebody serving who wasn't termed out, who I knew personally, and we were the same political party. So you didn't want to challenge that person. If you got a kid who's in third grade, probably not always the best time to be running for office. There's a lot of stuff going on. So there's the family sacrifice of it all. I think I always was drawn to public service in one way or another, so I don't think 2016 would have been the time to do it. But I did it at that particular time because I was a parent. And truth be told, I had run for office before in 2008. I was a hard-headed young 24-year-old, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, and lost. And my lesson from losing in 2008 was that you got to go and you got to serve people. You got to understand what's really going on. And that's where I started my career, from the mayor's office to OU to Career Tech to the chamber to Impact Tulsa to running again. And so when I ran the second time, you were running based on your conviction of what we need to do, particularly for young people in the state. Not because, I'm running because people should vote for me because I'm a good person. A lot of people run for office for good people, but what are you going to do for folks, and what's that core set of beliefs that's going to drive you? I didn't really get that until 2016, and so it was much different when I ran that time.
So then, being in office and being a public servant, I would imagine that there are frustrations and your hands are tied in so many things. I would think, but obviously I don't know. But how what has that journey been like?
Yeah, I think the at a top level, the most frustrating thing about being at the Capitol is that the people who serve there are far better than what we produce every year. And that's the most frustrating because we can do better. And I'll tell you, when I first got elected in 2016, it was like a highly volatile environment. I'm a Democrat, and when I got elected those first 2 years, I'm gonna tell you, like you're learning and we're arguing back and forth, and nobody's really getting to know each other. I thought every Republican there was a liar and all this kind of stuff, right? Like, because it's just environment. Because then I was doing that and I was racing home to whatever the gap, but I wasn't building relationships, right? It wasn't until like year 2 and 3 where I got to actually know some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. And I realized, our kids play baseball, so we can connect on that. And while we have these things we disagree on, like, I realized then there's only 100 other people in the state that knows what it's like to go through what I go through every day, leaving your family to do stuff, getting criticized, all that kind of stuff. And so like the partisan divide for me kind of went away on a personal level.
Yeah.
And so then you learned how to work with people. And then you realize then even though we all are coming at this differently, people really do care about this state. And even though, we got some issues that are just going to divide us at times, but you can't let that get in the way of the things that we agree on and doing a great job there. And so what I came to learn is that, man, I got more in common with people here, no matter what their political stripe is, than I do with a lot of folks. But that overarching frustration is that even with all the goodness that exists in people, and there are some people who got a little less good than others, but even with all that goodness that is within all of us and how convicted we are in what we do, we still just miss the mark a little bit. And you can't just pinpoint it on somebody's partisan affiliation. It's just every once in a while there's these weird pressures that come in, and you start to worry about things that I bet when you get done in your service you realize that thing didn't matter, but it also kept us from doing something amazing. And I think that's the overarching most frustrating thing is that we got really good people serving, generally speaking. We oftentimes let things that ultimately don't matter hold us back from doing things that are truly special. And that's kind of the overall frustrating thing. But I think that's true in politics at every level.
I would think so.
I think leadership is tough. And I think political leadership is a uniquely tough deal because it's a full contact sport a lot of times.
Yeah.
And so political courage is something that I think is going to have to define the next generation of political leaders. And I think that's going to have to come from both Democrats and Republicans. You're going to need courageous leaders on both sides of the aisle that are willing to do what is necessary to put us on a pathway to greatness.
Yeah. And so I agree with you, and I like hearing that. So pushing that to, or using that background for what you're doing now, running as the mayor of Tulsa, where do you see... What does that look like for you?
Yeah. I think on the other end, so the reason why I decided to run for mayor was that I think this is the greatest impact that you can have on your community serving in a local office in a lot of ways. Excuse me. And then I also think from a broader context around the country, Washington's always in gridlock. State legislatures can oftentimes be bogged down by partisan politics. At the local level, you can really come up with like the really great ideas that are going to move the country forward. So we do have an opportunity in Tulsa to, in a positive way, impact the lives of folks in Memphis or, folks in New York or folks in, Burns Flat, Oklahoma, right? If we can figure out how to come together to make our institutions work here, a lot of people can learn from that because I think this is where it starts, right? And I think it starts with people who love a community, who are willing to do what's necessary, and then come together and see the great work we've done together, right? And so that's the reason why I decided to run for mayor. I think that Tulsa is a city that has almost unmatched potential. I really do believe that. But it's going to take us removing some of these challenges that have kind of been stubborn for us for a long time. Homelessness is one of those, right? We've got to, we can't just be resigned to, we're going to address it or we're going to we got to say we're going to end homelessness, and we have a plan to do that by 2030. And that's critical that a community has clear goals and a clear outcome so we know how close we're getting to it. We know what we have to do more of or less of to get ourselves there. And so I think you have to commit yourself to these big, bold goals, and Tulsa can do it. I think that, it's incredibly important that we improve student outcomes. I know you have do a lot of work in real estate. And so, the number one reason people move to or out of your community are schools. And we got to get better outcomes for young people. So folks are like, okay, this is an even more attractive place. When we think about our workforce, I've been at the Capitol, as we said, for 8 years. I think at least 3 or 4 times I've voted on a $1 billion package to try to lure a company here, and we have not necessarily got it, whether it be Panasonic or Tesla, or whatever the case may be. That tells me we have a workforce issue that we have to really get on top of. And I think safety and public safety is always a high priority. So making this the safest big city in the country, and people think that, oh, you're just a talking point. No. The safest big city in the country is actually a distinction that you can track with data, right? And so, like, these things we have to commit ourselves to. So when we're really trying to put our best face forward, and so we can secure and, really lean into that untapped potential, that we get some of these challenges off the board, and we don't leave them for, my kid and his generation. They'll have some new things to worry about, probably some AI related stuff, as my guess. But for now, let's go ahead and move these challenges off the map, because what's going to happen is Tulsa's going to take off. I think we can really win the next decade in Tulsa, but we can't do it by just hoping these things go away. We have to be intentional about it.
Yeah, and I will touch base and circle back to more of that in a second, and those things that you just said. When we're talking about, Tulsa and how you said, it's really just getting ready to take off. I mean, from when you came here, from now, what are the things that you're seeing that you love? Like, what are the great things that are happening?
I came in here at a really interesting time. So when I got to Tulsa, there was no BOK Center. There was no ballpark downtown. There was none of that stuff, right? The University of Tulsa, where I went to school, looked completely different than it does today. I don't think people were talking about Tulsa. I mean, the gathering place. Well, there's a whole bunch of things that were not here back in those days. And honestly, even some of the things in our past that are in some ways, certainly painful parts of our past, but things that weren't talked about that I think do speak to our uniqueness. Some think about the race massacre in particular, and and how we were responding. Those were things that didn't exist at the time. Now, as you see, it's like we have those things now. We are a place that people are coming to. We are becoming this thriving place that folks don't maybe think about at first, but when they get here, they're like, man, I like this place, right? Like that's what Tulsa is. And so, I think when I got here, I'm not sure Tulsa was a place where people were like, oh, you know what, this is really awesome, because they weren't coming here to go to a concert.
Yeah.
They didn't see a downtown ballpark. They didn't have all, the great places to shop and do things. Now they do. And so this has becoming a place that has the amenities of a destination city. We just got to make sure we get it at the top of people's list now.
Yeah.
And I think that's the work of the future. So Tulsa's, it's changed quite a bit, man. There's not a day that I'm here or that I have people who come in town where I'm like, oh, yeah, we don't have that for you to do. The only thing that I want us to get at some point, I need a NFL, an NBA, or a Major League Baseball team. All right, I'll even take Major League Soccer. Any one of those. I think becoming a big league city is the one thing left undone. I think we can get there at some point. I'm hoping.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
I'm hoping, yeah.
I love the Drillers and all that.
I love the Drillers, too. I love the Drillers. I really do.
Yeah.
And I would love for the Drillers to be a Major League Baseball team. Maybe that's what I'll say. We'll still call them the Drillers if we must.
Yes. Yeah.
But I do. It's kind of funny you say that. I remember Drillers games at the fairgrounds back in the day, actually. And going to Drillers games over the years has been something I've shared with my now 16-year-old. And he's now a high school baseball player. So, having the Drillers here has actually been a big part of our lives as a father and son. We actually, this is kind of cool. So 8 years ago, we were at home doing nothing. And, there's never a time we had a Saturday one doing nothing. And I asked him if he wanted to go to a baseball game. The Rangers were not in Arlington that weekend. The Royals weren't in Kansas City. So the Cardinals were the closest team playing at home. So I asked Gavin, who was 8 years old, I was like, hey, do you want to go to a Cardinals game? He's like, how far is it? Of course, I was like, as if he had to drive. Like, why do you care? You can go to sleep, doesn't matter, right? And I told him, he's like, sure, which I was like, all right. So we pack up the car randomly on a Saturday, drive to St. Louis. We see the Cardinals play, I think, the Marlins. And every year since then, we've gone to a new baseball park that he's never been to. We just went to Tropicana Field in Tampa, and it's our 9th ballpark in 8 years together. So
okay, that's really cool. Yeah, so you're ready to have one in Tulsa, so you
can
travel.
Man.
Yeah, an easy trip.
Yeah,
there you go. Well, maybe that'll happen.
I think it's a good idea.
So as far as Tulsa goes, we're in your district, and I'm going to put you on the spot, and so you might be able to I'll let you give me more than one answer.
Okay.
But some of your favorite spots around here.
Oh, man. So I don't know if I should disclose this, but everybody who knows me knows it's true. So I'm not like a aficionado, but I'm a cigar smoker.
Okay.
And I remember years ago, there weren't a whole lot of cigar smokers. Now there's a lot of them now. So I'm like, man, there's a lot of amateurs around smoking cigars these days. Not all of us are old school. So, I used to go to Classic Cigars and hang out a lot. I can't go there as much as anymore, so that's kind of upsetting. But it's always been a place to kind of hang out and sit outside and smoke cigar, and then kind of if it was First Friday, there's a lot of activity down there downtown and all that. So I've always really enjoyed being down there because you kind of get to see people going about the city while enjoying a cigar.
Yeah.
I have a really good time. Me and my mom and some of my friends every once in a while used to go to 473 on a Sunday when it's not hot outside and sit outside and kind of hang out. Everybody's working throughout the week, and so finding ways to kind of connect there. Let's see. Obviously, anytime there's an opportunity to go to something at the BOK or the ballpark, but for me, the best place in town to be, and this comes from being an old football player at TU, is tailgating on a Saturday on the campus of the University of Tulsa.
Yeah. That's a good time.
That would be number one.
Okay, that's a good time.
That'd be number one.
College football is fun.
Oh yeah, and they're doing a great job. I tell you what, President Carson, I gotta give him a shout out on this deal.
Okay.
The pregame experience now is wild. I mean, he's at concerts out there and all kind of stuff. I mean, it's been amazing. And so when I say being there on a Saturday is my favorite place to be, it is not like a pandering answer or anything like that. It's like, it is so much fun now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny too, because, this is probably not what you want to talk about on the podcast. It's probably not something I should talk about on the podcast, but I'll never forget this season, he had a rapper come. And I remember looking at the faces of some of the older alums as this rapper was performing on stage, and I was like, "Now I bet they didn't see this coming." But tailgating at TU, but it's a really exciting time, and I really love it. It's something I can share with Gavin, but also I could see all my old teammates, and you see the folks coming from out of town, and so it's a great way to welcome people to Tulsa on a Saturday. So I love tailgating on Saturdays, and I have a tailgating spot right where they put a big TV up so I can watch the games before the TU game outside before I go into the game. So I love it.
Do you reserve it? Or you just get there early?
No, you reserve them. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know this.
You can get there early too. I mean, you get there early enough. Nobody's gonna move you probably. I mean, you can test the system.
That's my spot.
Yeah, you can test the system. I'll come record you then, just in case some drama goes down, and we'll make sure we upload to your Facebook page. It'll be a special episode.
That would be a special episode. My first TU tailgate was just at this OU-TU game.
This year?
Yeah.
Wasn't that awesome?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was so fun. I was like, I love tailgating. So
there you go.
I completely.
So you discovered a new love, and
I did.
Tailgating.
I did.
Yeah.
So I didn't know it was like that on all the other games. So
yeah. So like I said, Brad's done a great job of the pregame experience at TU.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense. It was not like that when I was playing football. Well, I mean, how would I know? I was never there before the game, but I don't remember people talking about it like they talk about it now.
Yeah.
So it's really it's just a cool deal. I really enjoy it.
As far as the great kind of resources that Tulsa has, what do you see? What are some of the resources that you see that that makes Tulsa great, that can continue to make Tulsa better? What kind of things do we have there?
Man, we have so many things, right? Like, so we're often looked at across the country for what we do in early childhood education. Now we can do better from an outcome standpoint, but from a system standpoint and folks who are invested in it, Tulsa is one of the best places in the country for it. I think what we're starting to see in investments in I've known in the past ones at OU and community health and those types of things that are like these issue areas that unless you got really strong philanthropic leaders who are dug in on an issue, it's not surface level stuff, it's root cause stuff. And we got a lot of people spending money on those things. And I think that's really critically important. The question is, though, how is the public sector, how's the city, how's the state also doing those things, right? The philanthropy can't solve our mental health challenges we have in this community. At some point, elected officials and leaders are going to have to be a part of that game as well. And, you know, one of the areas in the education plan I put out that I'm excited about that I would need some public-private partnerships on is what we've called the Teach in Tulsa Fund, which would incentivize teachers who are teaching in some of our most challenged schools but are doing a great job there. How do we invest a little bit more to keep them in those places? Because we know teacher turnover is a really challenging thing in a lot of those schools. And so I'm excited about where we have money going into now, but I'm also even more excited about the areas where we can partner to address some of those underlying issues that impact us in ways in which we see, like when we read the newspaper and something's not going right. Now we recognize, you know, kind of where do you need to make some targeted investments to make those things a lot less notable when you look at them at the end of the year.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Okay. As far as now, we're going to talk more about like the experience of living in Tulsa and being here. And as far as, you know, we talked about some places that you like to hang out here. But if people were coming to Tulsa, what are the 3 things, or people that are just used to Tulsa and don't even know, like the 3 things that you would say you have to try? Like,
oh, man. So if you got kids, I actually have some friends that are coming through here now. They got young kids, so obviously you got to check out the Gathering Place. That's like a thing. I have some friends who are kind of history buffs, so I was like, you got to go to Greenwood Rising, and folks who are arts folks. We got Philbrook and Gilcrease. I mean, like, there's all these really interesting things about Tulsa that, like, you can't do them all, but they also don't jump off the page all the time. So it's like, what are you into? And then I'm going to connect you to those things. I think, again, like, I've had some friends who have come here who live like in North Texas, and instead of going to Dallas for concerts, they come to Tulsa because they feel like it's a little bit easier and that kind of stuff. And so I mean, I think I'd ask somebody, what are you into? Because we got something for you.
Yeah.
And so I do have some friends who are actually coming. They went up to Branson. They're coming back through, and they're going to stop here and then go to the Gathering Place and a few places like that. So.
Yeah, you have to go to the Gathering Place. It's magical.
You do. You do. I just remember when it opened, and I was like, man, I could not believe this is in Tulsa. It was wild.
I know. My kids were too old to take them to the park, but I was like, man, I wish I could have taken them to the park when.
It's funny. Gavin was just, you know, old enough. I mean, he was kind of on the cusp of doing playground equipment, but then he got to the age where he and his friends are going to the basketball courts. The problem is I'm not invited to that anymore. So like he goes all the time now, but.
You don't get the invite?
No, then that's got to be the guy. You know, I will say, though, even if you're like kind of a young professional, even older professional, I've actually went and worked over there in the lodge, you know, just sit there and work there.
I work in the lodge sometimes.
So I mean, like that's, you know, it's a coffee shop down there. So there really is something for everybody there. But it's funny now, like, you know, me and Gavin started going together, but now he has aged out of going with his dad. And so Dad goes to the lodge and Gavin goes play basketball.
Well, they have pickleball courts there now. Are you going to play pickleball?
I'm not deep in the pickleball game yet. Now, I think I could be. I'm not there yet, though.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, so here's the thing, too. So there's a place that's on 11th Street, and, you know, I was going to go play. But everybody looked like they had played for a lot longer than I have, which is I've never played. And I was a little bit embarrassed. I was like, you know, I'm not sure I'm ready.
Really?
Those folks look serious.
You got to go try it.
Yeah, they look serious, though. So
yeah,
maybe I need to. You know, I used to play the Nintendo Wii thing, you know,
and so
like
you could probably play.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll probably be okay, but it's like who's this guy? He's terrible.
No,
so
no one's gonna say that. I've never played, but I'm planning to very soon.
Oh,
yeah.
When are you gonna play?
I don't know, but I would just go and play, and I think I would be fantastic.
All right, let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it. We're gonna do it.
Okay, we'll get it on film.
Oh man. We'll talk about that part. We'll talk about that part.
You already said I'll do it.
I know. So it's funny. I just made this whole deal last night at this forum about how it's important that, you know, when elected officials are doing stuff, you know, people should feel comfortable recording us doing it because we are public. But that's different, though. That's different.
Because it's the first time.
Yeah, I was thinking in my head, I was like, you can't be a hypocrite. I just want to make it clear in front of all these cameras, this is a different deal than what I was talking about before.
Well, we'll
Maybe
see.
I'll try some pickleball.
Yes. Yeah.
Let me know when you're going, and
Okay.
then, you know, but I'm coming, just so you know, I'm coming decked out, man. Headband, everything. Like, I'm going to look the part.
Okay.
And now if I'm not good, that's one thing. But when people see me, they're going to be like, oh my God.
Yeah. So there'll be no doubt, like you dress for the outfits.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You're going to be like, oh my goodness, is that Monroe? Like, it's my alter ego now.
Okay.
Pickleball man. All right.
Pickleball man. Okay. Switching gears a little bit. And again, I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
Give me a Tulsan
Okay.
who you admire, who has impacted you, who you admire?
Man, there's so many. And the first person that comes to mind is actually my former boss, Kathy Taylor. And the reason why she comes to mind for me is because when I met her in 2006, I was a senior in college. She had no reason at all to take an interest in me and help me, but she did. And she's done it for so many people like me over the years, not just like, oh, give you advice, but like really kind of take you under their wing and, just be really gracious in a way that you ain't got no reason to be that way. And then I've watched her be somebody who could have, decided to, vacation the rest of her life or something like that, but continues to show up. She was Secretary of Commerce before I met her. Then she was mayor, left mayor. Governor Henry asked her to come back to the state, so she went back to the state and did that. Came back, and she was who I co-founded Impact Tulsa with.
Okay.
And then Brad Carson comes calling at TU, and I remember, and I hope I can say this. She may get mad at me. She went in as an interim, and I was like, Kathy, there's no way you're gonna be an interim. Like, A, you're gonna be really good at it, but B, people are going to want you to stay. And she did. And I just think somebody who every time that she's been asked has been willing to serve. To me, it is the embodiment of what Tulsa's about in a lot of ways. Now, you can agree or disagree with people, what they think or whatever the case may be. But those folks who continue to show up to serve when they don't have to, those are special people, and I've just seen it with her close up, and so she's definitely somebody who I look up to.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, to wrap up, and in this, what do you want to leave? What do you want to leave the viewers with?
I think what is important for us as a community moving forward is that we all understand that ultimately it's not simply the job of a mayor or a state representative or anything. It really is the job of all of us. The work you do every day, you're one of the great ambassadors of this community when folks are looking at where they may live in this community, right? And so we all have like this real unique and special role in like building the life of Tulsa. And I hope we all feel the agency in that and know that whatever the future holds for us, it's going to be a great future, not simply because things are just going to work out, but because we individually are going to do what's necessary. And when you put all that together, what you have is an amazing community. And that's really why, I decided to run, is to inspire that in this community and just be somebody who, as one of the 400 and some odd thousand people here who serves in a particular role, but does it on the strength, on the shoulders of everybody else who lives here. And I think that's so critically important, right, that we all do it together. And I think if we do it together, what do we know about Tulsa, right? And I think this is what makes us super special, right? It's like we, at one point, we were the oil capital of the world, so we powered the entire globe, right? Greatest innovators in the world. We were the center of black wealth, so even at a time where it's very difficult for people of color, it was Tulsans who found a way to build this cradle of wealth in this community. We are all Indian reservations, so I believe, we should consider ourselves kind of the gateway to Indian country. And we are home to a lot of first-generation Americans. We are an international city here, and we've proven from the time where we first started to today that some of the greatest things in the country that are possible, they're possible here. We just got to go and take it, and I think we can because we always have.
That is a great wrap up. I love that. And the vote is coming soon.
August 27th.
August 27th.
Yeah.
So people need to get out and vote.
I would love it. I would love it.
Thanks for joining us. You were
awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. Pickleball next.
Pickleball.
All right.
On video.
There you go. Oh.